2, and good morning, and welcome to the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. My guest this morning is Parish Councilman Jeff Ard, District 1. He is also running for re-election. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to roll through our normal little bit here, talk about some traffic and some weather, and then we're going to jump right in. Please remember, if you ever miss any of these shows or you don't have a time to catch it, you can get it at www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. They are free. We offer audio and video versions. I promise that the audio version is way better than the video version. Traffic this morning, heavy traffic in Watson in and around Live Oak High School. Heavy traffic on Burgess as well as 190 in and around Walker High School. And of course, traffic on 16 by Denham Springs High School. So the high schools tend to attract a little traffic right around this time of the day. Heavy delays on I-12 westbound backed up past Jubin Road. Minor delays at Jubin Road and 190. 190 at 4-H Club Road and River Road looking relatively clear this morning, so that may be your best bet for getting into Baton Rouge. Currently 73 degrees. It's going to be a high 95, another hot one. Probably not a whole lot of rain. It's going to continue to be dry. That cold front is coming next Monday. Scattered thunderstorms, and it's going to drop your overnight lows down to the low 60s with mid 80s as the high during the day. So that will be nice. A couple of things to talk about real quick. Please early vote. There are 3 days left, today, tomorrow, and Saturday. You can go to the Registrar of Voters office in Livingston or the Denham Springs Walker Branch Library. They're open from 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. We got updated statistics last night from the Registrar of Voters. Early voting totals already surpassed in Livingston Parish the 2015 mark, which was the last gubernatorial election. 5,530 people have already voted. 5,248 voted early in the 2015 gubernatorial election with one Saturday left. So remember, you can early vote through Saturday, October 5th at the Denham Springs Walker Branch Library or the Registrar of Voters office. Kept it under 2 minutes. Good morning, sir. Again, thanks for joining us. And, let's jump into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your family, that sort of thing.
I've been married for 24 years. I have 2 kids. I have a daughter that's RN. I have a son that just finished school, and he is an operator for a plant. Okay. So we both finished college, graduated. I think the term of that is parenting done right.
There you go. There you go.
I have a beautiful granddaughter that just made a year old.
Oh, congratulations.
So that's where all my money goes these days. I'm a superintendent / project manager for MMR. We're one of the largest E&I companies in the Baton Rouge area. I've been doing that ever since I got out of high school. I've been doing electrical work, instrument work. Been running crews since I was about 26, 27 years old. I've had them from 100 to 2 employees working under me. I've helped set up maintenance programs, permitting, you name it, I've done it. So really love doing it. And then I stepped into politics 4 years ago, and I kind of fell in love with it. So here I am.
There you go. Okay. So, that wide breadth of experience there. And, that's the next question is what made you decide to seek re-election?
Well, I feel like I haven't been able to really accomplish everything I wanted to. A lot of that due to the flood. I had a few things that I wanted to try to get going when I come into office. The flood happened, threw us for a curve. I've said this many a times that it takes almost 2 years to figure this job out, because you don't sit down at a desk all day long. What do I do? What do I do? Mm-hmm. You need issues to happen. Mm-hmm. You need people calling you to really learn the job.
Right.
So I've always said it takes about 2 years to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So if you don't really give a councilman at least 2 terms, you're spinning the wheels.
Right.
Because every time a new one comes in, he has to learn.
Right.
He has to learn, and it's different when it's full time. Mm-hmm. Full time, you should be picking the job up. You're doing it every day. Mm-hmm. We just don't do it every day. So I feel like there's some things I want to finish. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of some key stuff for our parish right now. The master plan being one. So I really want to finish what I started.
Okay. Well, and so instead of asking what I was going to ask, which is what are the priorities for the seat, it sounds like you're already in the midst of some stuff, and that's why you're seeking re-election. You talked about the master plan. What are a few other projects that you think are priorities for the seat?
Well, in my district, when I ran last time, we have an issue with Fire District 12. It north of the interstate, the Satsuma area, kind of runs up north of Livingston, a little bit on the east side of Livingston. It is the only unfunded fire district that I'm aware of left in our parish.
Okay.
The town of Livingston is always taking care of it. We get like a stipend from the state every year, and 30 years ago they made a deal. We'll just give you that money, and you take care of the area. It's only $30,000 a year. They can't even hardly put the fuel in the trucks for that now.
Right.
So it's getting to be very hard for the town of Livingston to take care of this area. The mayor's told me that they do more calls in 12 than just in the town.
Right.
So they've come to me, we have to do something. And if we don't do something, these people's insurance rates are going to go out the roof, because the town of Livingston's going to have to say, we just can't afford it anymore.
Right.
So that's one of the things. And we knew when I first come in, that was one of my top priorities, which I was working with Mr. Darrell Jones at the time. He was the mayor. So me and him really kind of was working on it. And then he stepped down from being mayor and passed away. And now I'm trying to work with David McQuarrie to get it going and figure out how we can make this going. But I know people don't like hearing new tax, but this is actually one of them that's going to save the people in District 12 money, because I hate to see what insurance rates are going to go to if we don't get a funded fire district in that area.
Right. And it is true. It depends on their fire rating, which passes along to you, and a lot of that has to do with funding and what kind of implements they have, training, that sort of thing. So that it's an interesting point to bring up, and I know that right now there's a little bit of anti-tax sentiment, which is interesting. One of the things we'll talk about a couple of things today, but one of the things that is interesting is there was a little bit of I don't know what to call it. I'm just going to call it a hubbub. 2 council meetings ago regarding some funds for drainage and that sort of thing. Within that, that all got pushed to the side and it didn't really get discussed. But within that, the road tax kind of got swallowed up and spit out to the public that, maybe the spring isn't the best. Have spoken to Parish President Leighton Ricks, and he agrees they're going to move it to the fall. What are your feelings on that?
Well, the old cliche was, if you want to pass a tax, put it on a small ballot, get your people to go out there and pass it.
Right.
We don't want to do that no more. We want it in the big election. We want where we have more of our people telling us what they want.
Sure.
We want, and it has to be something that gets the people to the polls.
Right.
So that was our whole thought process. Let's get it on the big ballot, because this road tax is so important for our parish.
Right.
I mean, it will tremendously hurt parish government if that doesn't pass.
Right.
It is, people complain about how we patch a hole or how we clean a ditch. Without this road tax, you're going to be very lucky to have someone to call to even do what they do now.
Right.
So it is extremely important. We've said this before. If you're going to support any tax for parish government, that road tax is the one you need to support.
Right. That is a 1-cent sales tax that's on the books. 75% of it goes to DPW and the road program. A quarter of that, or 25% of it, goes to fund the jail. It's also worked into paying off the bonds that were issued in the mid-2000s for a massive road overlay. Once those are paid off, there will be roughly $6 million per year for the road overlay program, hoping that number will grow. And you may get into some of the other things. As a council, should you be reelected, and right now it's looking like you will be. For the group as a whole, what are some of the priorities? You talked about the master plan before. I know there are some things. You have an interesting situation in your district,
Yes.
partially funded, partially unfunded drainage. So talk to us about a few priorities you believe are facing the council moving forward.
Well, I mean, I think our biggest thing we're going to have to work to as a whole is parish-wide drainage.
Mm-hmm.
We have to come up with a way to fund a parish-wide drainage system. And you mentioned about us pulling up, we talked about reapportions of the library tax.
Mm-hmm.
We might have to look into some of these things to figure out a way to do it without asking the people for more money.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to ask for money because I know most people think that politicians don't pay taxes, but we pay them just like everybody else.
Right.
So I don't want to raise the taxes for people, but we're hurting in our drainage.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a lot of drainage work done right now, especially in my district. I'm having my two main canals, Hornsby and Coyells, getting cleaned out. I don't want to be in the same situation 10 years from now because we didn't have the money to just maintain it.
Right.
Right now is the perfect time to get this going and start maintaining these canals that are getting cleaned out right.
Right.
And make it easier on us. We wouldn't have to have that big lump sum of money because we have to go in and do this huge clean out.
Right.
We could just step right into a maintenance program, start putting them on a regular work order where they go out there and check them and make sure everything's good. Because you never know when a tree's going to fall across or a bank's going to wash out from a rain. So you have to have a regular maintenance program. And right now, the only thing we have to let us know is the people.
Right.
So if people aren't calling, I have people all the time that call me about drainage issues, and I'm like, well, did you call DPW?
Mm-hmm.
No. Well, they don't know if you don't call.
Right.
We just don't have a routine maintenance program on our canals, and I would love to see that be part of a parish-wide drainage system.
So, before y'all, in fall of 2017, there were a couple of drainage districts on the ballot for funding. So you think, just for clarity's sake, moving more towards a parish-wide drainage scope would be a little bit better than trying to fund those districts individually?
Correct. I felt like we pushed it a little too fast.
Mm-hmm.
But people were hurting, they were scared. We just had to flood. I sit in a couple of the meetings and was telling them, guys, we need to slow down. Mm-hmm. We need to give the people more information. Have a couple of town halls, really show them what we're going to do with this money. And it was just such a fear that this would happen again. They wanted to try to hurry up. And even with the people hurting, they still let us know, no, you have to give us more information on what you're going to do with our money.
Right.
So that's what I felt like I got from that. So I feel like the best way is to figure out what makes it fair for everybody across the board. Pay the same thing, and everybody gets the same service. Because we have three districts over here on the west side where you have canals that run through all three districts. Mm-hmm. Well, you might have one in the middle decide we're working on the canal this week.
Right.
And the other two's not going to work on them for 2 months. By the time they work on them, the one in the middle is all nasty again. So we have to get something that gets them to where when they work on a canal, they do the whole canal, top to bottom.
Right.
And parish-wide, you kind of have that board that's over everything that makes sure we're working to do everything right. And we could still set it up where you still have your districts, almost like the school board. You still have your districts, but you have that one board that oversees it all and make sure that, hey, we're going to spend some money over here. Let's do the whole canal.
Right.
Get all districts together. We're going to do it all together and make sure that this canal is cleaned out properly.
Right. So, there's a lot of that going on. What he's discussing is there's District 2, Gravity 2 in Watson. Gravity 5, which covers part of your district, mm-hmm. as well as North Walker. And then Gravity 1, which is areas north of Denham flowing down near to Port Vincent. And they all have to deal with things like Grace Creek and that sort of thing. Yes. And it's tough. And you do have to do some kind of work together, because whatever you do upstream will affect downstream.
Correct.
So, another thing that y'all are facing as a council, just recently, as in a week ago today, actually, you adopted the Envision Livingston Master Plan from 2013. Needs some work, but, the impetus or the push there is zoning. So that's the first thing on the agenda. I know that Tracy Girlinghouse, who was the proponent in front of yours, next door neighbor, it was a big push of that. And his first stop is going to be with Mark Harrell to discuss grant funding and things like that. Backing away from all that and talking about that one word zoning, you have a wildly different district from north to south. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess you could say the west side of my district, they're not necessarily zoned, but they're close enough to zoning to understand it.
Right.
I also have the town of Livingston that's zoned. So I would probably say maybe a little bit under a third of my district, probably about a quarter of my district deals with zoning. But I have some big subdivisions, but the majority of my people are just still own 10 acres of land, 20 acres of land. I have cows roaming.
Right.
I have a lot of that type of living in my area, and it's really been difficult to make them understand zoning will protect your land.
Right.
Because it's going to protect what builds around you. That's the biggest thing with zoning that we need as a council. Right now, if somebody comes in and they meet the ordinance, we have to let them have their permit. We cannot stop them. With zoning, we can't. Right. We can say, no, you're not going to dump another 600 cars on this little small road just because you can meet all the ordinance of your subdivision. The majority of my area will be rural when it's zoned. Right. So not really that much is going to stop the way they're living now. Other than being rural, I can stop big developments. Right. That needs to go in a residential area, not in rural area. Right. Now, can someone come in and get a waiver, which some people hate you saying that word, to actually get this done? Yeah, they probably could. But I wouldn't give one in my area unless everybody in that area agreed that they're fine with it. And I'm not going to do that work. Whoever wants to build a development is going to do that work, and they're going to have to go meet with these people and make sure that they're good with doing that. But we get looked at as, why y'all not stopping this? Why y'all not stopping this? Well, we don't have the power. Right. Here's the power that allows us to do it, and it's called zoning. Right. So if you want to call me to stop something, you need to give me zoning. Right. It's simple as that.
Well, there you go. And we talked a little bit the first time we talked. It was before campaign season. We were just kind of talking about what was going on. You had discussed some of that with your constituents, and they seem to be, according to you, they seem to be relatively okay with that thought. Do you, I don't know if they've told you or not, but did you think that they were okay with it due to the explanation or the example that you gave, which is, with zoning, we'll be able to keep this kind of stuff out of here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when I talk to them, first thing they say is, I don't want government telling me what I can do with my land. And then I tell them immediately, well, then I can't tell your neighbor what to do with his land. Right. So you have to look at it that way. We're just really telling you what you can't do. Right. Long as you don't do this, you're fine. We don't want you impacting your neighbors in the surrounding area with something that's just going to be bad for the area.
Right. Well, and that makes sense, and how isn't that always what it is? Folks are no, don't let them do it. It's okay if I do it. Yeah. Excuse me. So any other little things? Any other right now sewers being tossed around. Well, really sewer's a big one. And that was one of the things that actually kind of caused the master plan committee, which you were on, to kind of hit a, because they wanted master drainage and master sewer. I suppose since we've talked about drainage, we've talked about zoning, that's sort of the next piece of the puzzle. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is people need to understand the master plan is not this is the written law.
Right.
It's a guideline.
Right.
That's what it is. It's a guideline for us to implement zoning, to help us get parish-wide sewer, parish-wide drainage. It kind of gives us steps of how to implement all this stuff. It helps us. It really, the most focus is on the corridor, which is between the railroad tracks and I-12 all the way through the parish. And a lot of people don't realize, but if you ride that corridor, every type of property we have in our parish is in that corridor.
Yeah.
We have everything in there, because when you start getting out on the east side of Livingston, you have the country living. You have people that are raising cows and have farms, and so all that's along that corridor. So originally that was the focus, was we'll just do the corridor and then we would expand from that.
Right.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and try to zone everything lightly and really focus on the corridor.
Right.
And figuring out how are we going to implement all these things that we need to get parish-wide.
Right. So, the corridor, he said, it's a geographical area that begins north of I-12, right around the Canadian Northern Railroad tracks, extends to about a mile south of I-12. The focus on that was to try to make it a gateway in the Livingston Parish, zone it and bring in infrastructure appropriate for, light industrial and commercial, try to create jobs as well, because as of the 2013 writing, and it's pretty similar, this day, 2 out of 3 people leave this parish to go work somewhere else. So, trying to keep them here, trying to keep their tax dollars here. So that was the purpose of the economic corridor. So it will be interesting to see, how that pans out moving forward. So, last thing, if there's one thing that you haven't discussed before, that you would be willing to throw out there today as something you're interested in your next 4, what would it be?
Well, I have a very good friend of mine. It's on the council of West Baton Rouge. Okay. We work together every day, and I get a lot of information from him. He actually got into it a term before me, and I think Mr. Talbot might have mentioned this when he was here a couple of days ago, but he had brought to my attention about them doing a culvert upgrade program in West Baton Rouge. I got very interested in it. I'd go sit down with him all the time, talk about it, brought it back to the council. Said, guys, I think this could be pretty big for our parish if we could do this, because it's helped them out tremendously. I mean, he said he had subdivisions that flooded every time, and they get no calls anymore from them.
Right.
Just by doing a culvert upgrade. That's all they did, was go in there and pull all these little ones that were put in 50 years ago and upgrade them to the size they need to be.
Right.
So I brought it to the council. I've talked to the parish president about it and said, God, this is something we really need to figure out how we can do it. And if the road tax passes, we will have the funds to do that.
Yeah.
We could actually say 1 year, we're going to do a culvert upgrade program.
Right.
We're not going to put asphalt down this year. We're going to go through, we're going to pick all the roads, parish roads that we're planning on, just on the list, and have an engineer go through there, pick all these culverts, change them all out before we put our money on them roads.
Right.
So that we have our roads draining properly, because that's what's tearing our roads up, is they're not draining right.
Right.
So I give this all the time. I tell people, everybody says when you build a development, you raise it up and it's causing the next person to flood. I've gotten to where I've rode around a lot every time when it rains. And I go to these developments and I try to see what is causing. I don't think it's because they build up. I think it's because they make their drainage system where it's a 24-inch drainage system coming out. And it hits this ditch rushing out, and then all of a sudden it hits my mom and papa's little 12-inch culvert. Some of them not even 12 inch, maybe a 10-inch culvert that was put in 50, 60 years ago.
Right.
Well, guess who's going to flood? Well, Mom and Paul's going to flood.
Yeah.
So if we can get them culverts pulled out, get them to the right size, it might not stop everything, but it's definitely going to improve it. It would definitely improve it. So I think that could be something big for our parish.
And that would be part of the road program.
Part of the road program. Because the tax says overlay of roads and drainage of roads. So that would be the drainage along the side of the road. So if you're not spending money in a way that people didn't say you could spend it. Right. If they said we could spend it on drainage of roads, and that's exactly what that would be.
Right. Well, Mr. Ard, we appreciate you joining us. Anything you'd like to add before we cut off and move into the podcast a little longer form?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is get out and vote. You know, we have 3 more days of early voting. The election's actually next Saturday, October 12th. It's been a long couple of months, so I'm ready for next Saturday to be here.
Sure.
So originally we really pushed the early voting because of the LSU game, and now they moved the LSU game to a 7 o'clock game.
Still a couple other events though. Southeastern's got their homecoming fair Saturday, and it's the nobody can tell me if it's the second or third week of hunting.
Second week. This weekend's the first week.
There you go, of hunting season. So still worth it if you can make it out over the next 3 days. Still worth a chance to go out there.
And I guess I'm gonna leave on a little bit of a sad note. We lost a very important person in Livingston Parish.
Yes.
Mr. Clo Fontenot. He was a very, very good friend of mine. He was one that pushed me into this, kind of. We coached baseball for 14 years together.
Wow.
So we have his funeral today, and a lot of people don't know what all he did for this parish, but he was huge in where we're at today.
Yes, and I know that once he had moved on from the legislature, he was very involved in the happenings in Livingston, especially that part. So, thank you for mentioning that. Appreciate it. And again, Mr. Jeff Ard, he is currently the incumbent, and is also a candidate for Parish Council District 1. Big district, big anchor on the north side of the parish, contains the town of Livingston and all points north. Thank you again, sir, for joining us here on the morning show. For those of you watching, remember, please early vote. 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. today, tomorrow, and Saturday have already surpassed the 2015 early voting total. Keep on voting. Regular election is October 12th. As we mentioned, it's a crowded kind of day, so try to get it in early if you can. Please remember, if you go to the library between 8:30 and 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m., you got to go in the back because they will be closed. One more time, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate Mr. Jeff Ard joining us. He and I are going to sit down for a podcast. Remember that you can find these shows, if you ever miss them, at www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. There are audio and video versions there. They are free. You can watch them at your leisure. The news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks again. We hope you have a great Thursday, and we will see you tomorrow with Mr. J. Rogers Pope.